Hello and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got Korianne Orton-Johnson from Brigham Young University on the show. Obviously, for many of you hearing the school Brigham Young, this will likely be an episode that won't be for all of you. We've talked about before how we really want to showcase the whole map of the college landscape, both in the collegiate world, kind of containing some of those non-academic conservatories we talked about, like Norwalk and IAMT, which is upcoming, some international schools, some of those BA programs, including more non-audition programs like Northwestern, which are also coming up. And then in our artist-specific episodes, like we recently had an episode with Brandon Gardner that was really on improv and sketch comedy, or Tom Kitt on composing. So just to say, we're following through on that mission and goal, especially in year 3 of the podcast. I want to think of this as an ever-expanding guide showing different kind of paths and different limbs of the tree. We will still have returning guests from big audition-based BFAs. We have upcoming returnees from CMU and CCM, and we're going to have more big Broadway names like Derek Klena as well. But we're also going to keep trying to show those diverse paths of all kinds, partially because I do think most of this information is not particularly topical, meaning that most of the episodes, if you listen back a year, 2 years even, most of the information is going to be the same. So I invite you to kind of look at our past catalog as an ever-going resource, as opposed to just, catch your weekly updates on the most topical information. We will try to make sure that we are updating and making sure things that you need to hear are updated. But anyway, that's how I like to think of listening to the podcast, at least. And as you'll hear in this episode, a very large percentage of BYU MDT students are Mormon, and all are Christian. So for those of you for whom that's a turnoff, and again, I invite you to skip back a week or so to some of our other episodes on more secular schools, which of course is the vast majority of them. For those who are interested in listening about a religious school, meaning you've listened this far into the episode, I will say BYU definitely has a strong reputation in the industry in terms of working professionals who've graduated from there, including one of our own dance coaches. But if it's not for you and you're caught up on all our other episodes, then please spend this next 30 minutes writing us a rating and review in your podcast platform of choice. We talk in the episode about how faith plays a role at school, not too dissimilar to my upcoming conversation with Corey Cott, who himself is a very devout religious man, in some of the relationships of religion and art for artists. I myself, as many of you may know, am an agnostic person, so this is all more of an observation than my direct experience, but I know for our more religious families, going to a school like this might be a serious consideration. As we release this episode on May 15th, it is another round of our seniors making some of their final decisions. They're still trickling in with their commitments because of that FAFSA snafu this year, so we don't have a distinct May 1st date the way that we have in years past, but continued congratulations to our seniors who have now made their decisions and those who are still holding out until June 1st. We are with you on this long journey. And juniors, I'll just remind you, there are a few more weeks for you to get that discount for our summer faculty masterclass, which will expire at the end of this month. So don't miss out on that discount. I hope you all had wonderful Mother's Days. I certainly did. It was the first holiday Solvay was able to really understand and celebrate. I mean, I guess my recent birthday was too, but I feel weird calling my birthday a holiday. But that was a really special day for our whole family. I hope you all had similarly special days, and I hope you really enjoyed this interview with Korianne. Well, we are so excited to welcome Korianne Orton-Johnson from Brigham Young University, henceforth known as BYU. Korianne has a BFA in Music Dance Theater from this Brigham Young University and an MM in Vocal Performance. She's performed all over the country, been a music director everywhere, and is currently an assistant professor and head of Music Dance Theater and Contemporary Voice Division Coordinator at BYU, which is located in Provo, Utah. They take classes of about 16. They offer a BFA in acting and a BFA in music dance theater, which we'll chat a little bit about on the show. Korianne, welcome. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. It's a beautiful day here in Provo. The sun is finally shining.
My impression is that when is it not a beautiful day out there? From the little time I spent during the pandemic out west, I was like, it just seems sunny and gorgeous all the time.
Winters are not my favorite, I'll be honest, but
cold.
Yeah, it's very cold, and I don't love driving in the snow. So there's that.
Oh, oh, I love it. Give me sunny snow over a
Yes.
gray, gloomy, rainy New York day.
Yes, please.
But that's not what we're here to talk about, though. I guess we'll talk a little bit about some geography and stuff. But give me anything else I need to know about you in terms of sort of your journey to BYU. So, I read that little brief bio, but anything that we want to know about you before we dive into the program itself?
Well, my story is a little unique in that during my senior year as a student, my professors asked me to stay on and keep teaching as
Uh-huh.
adjunct professor. So I was teaching there since 2002
Mm-hmm.
as adjunct. And then in 2019 is when I became full time.
Yep.
So I've been there quite a long time and seen, different sides of it being a student, but then also being a faculty member. And I really enjoy it.
This is all belying your apparent age. For anyone who's looking at the video, long time. This is hopefully hard to believe for anyone who's getting the video experience.
It's a filter, not really, but
Filter. We'll take. Well, let's dive into BYU. And so let's first start off with just sort of general question. What do you think it means to be a BYU student? Maybe especially in terms of the music, dance, theater division. What distinguishes a BYU student maybe from some other universities where people are studying theater?
so BYU is unique in that we are a Christian school. And so most of the students that come to BYU, whether they are affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, want a Christian-based education.
Mm-hmm.
So that in and of itself sets us apart. We pray in class, we pray before shows. It's very much a part of our culture here. Um, we do pride ourselves on a very strong triple threat program,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially when it comes to dance. A lot of our students come out as very proficient dancers. And even though, most students would want to be leads, we also have students that really are looking for that professional ensemble track.
Yep.
And so we really set both kinds of performers up for success moving forward in the
Yep.
professional world.
Well, and let's hit the Mormon elephant right if it's in the room, let's hit it right off the top.
Hit it in the face.
What percentage of students are Mormon at the school, and like how would it work for maybe a non-Mormon student if you were attending BYU?
That is a really great question. I probably should have done my research on the exact percentage,
We'll
but
take an approximation. We're very vague. We're theater people here. We don't need math. It doesn't need to be 75%. It can be
um,
what about what we're talking about?
I can tell you in our program right now, we range about like we have around 50 students total in just our BFA MDT program.
Yeah.
And we probably, I think we just have one
One non-Mormon. So most
non-member.
people here are going to be Mormon.
Yeah,
Well, and how do you think? So yeah, I don't know how much you've looked at other like Catholic universities. How does it compare in terms of sort of the level of religiosity for compared to like some of these other religious institutions? Does
yeah,
it feel like it is more religious? I mean, you mentioned sort of praying before shows and praying in class. If especially I'm thinking maybe of a student who is potentially Mormon, but is on the sliding scale of going, I don't know how much that's a big part of my life.
sure.
Like how would that feel for that kind of student?
I would hope, especially in the MDT program, that regardless of where they are on their faith journey, that they would feel accepted. I mean, we have a variety of LGBTQ students. We have
Hmm.
a variety of ethnicities, and I would hope. I know that that is the goal amongst a lot of my colleagues,
Yep.
for us to have an environment of inclusion, like I said, regardless of where they are on their faith journey, because, um, it, I don't know, religion looks different and spiritual practice looks different for everybody. And
Yep.
so I think what we try to do is take people where they are and, um, yeah, just hopefully make them feel welcome and make them feel like they can be their own person.
Well, one of the reasons I asked, I had a Mormon schoolmate at school when I went to Carnegie Mellon,
Mhm.
and it was interesting watching sort of the way that artistic training impacted her religious
Mm,
beliefs, right? So I guess how do you
yeah.
find like does it influence curriculum? Does it influence show choice? How do you sort of encounter because often theater and the arts, addressing things that are, going to straddle some lines of what might, go on in a church. And so, well,
Sure.
how does that feel, or how does that work for you guys?
It definitely impacts our show choice because we are also catering to the community in terms of our audience. So that's really tricky. There's a committee that gets together. It also gets passed up through the higher ups so that everybody has a say in maybe what they would be concerned about.
Yep.
Just last year we did Godspell, and while that is a show about Jesus Christ and his disciples.
Yep.
Oddly enough, just because of the nature of the show, because it's kind of a pop rock
Yep.
show, there were some concerns with us doing that show. Actually, however, those that chose to just dive in and be a part of the show itself really came out with a changed view of people called it their Jesus. So a lot of people ended up coming together. We also invited people of other faiths to come and see
Mhm.
that show as well because we didn't want it. Obviously, it's not a Mormon show.
Right.
Um, but I think there are a lot of concepts and a lot of stories, parables, and a belief in our Savior that everyone can kind of get together on the same page. And to me, that was a beautiful testament of what theater can do and how theater can bring people together with like-minded ideas. As far as curriculum goes, we do try to give the students things maybe a little bit more outside of the box, because we want them to know how to navigate those things once they leave BYU.
Yep.
BYU is not it's not the place for us to do just dare I say Mormon shows. There's a place for that, and there's a niche for that, but actually that's not what our program is about. Our program is about training professional actors, actresses, teachers, producers,
Yep.
choreographers, the whole gamut. But we want them to know how to navigate those topics,
Right.
because those
An
topics
awful
are
lot to do.
actually really important. We have a prophet a long time ago who actually said that the only way to see good sometimes, and I am paraphrasing like crazy. So if anybody of my faith listens to this, they might be like,
They
she's
forgive you in
crazy.
advance. Paraphrase. Paraphrase.
There you go. But he said that we have to show the other side of that coin.
Mhm.
We have to show the evil on stage to know what the good is.
Mhm.
And it's important for our students to know how to navigate those stories
Yep. No,
because
it's
they're
something I think
important to tell.
we encounter a lot in New York is having a lot of these conversations of like
Mm.
what we put on stage, especially I think in the post, I'm going to call it the post Twitter world, but really it's like the internet, and like
Mm.
all the forms of it in terms of going, can you show nuance and gray and difficulty and parts of conversation maybe where the writer doesn't show, hey, this is my exactly how I feel, and here's my very obvious conclusion. It can be really kind of tricky.
Sure.
And how do you have those conversations? But before we move past curriculum, I want to go just a little more granularly in terms of talk me through the 4 years. So what would, especially as a music, dance, theater major, what would I end up with in terms of my 4 years of training in all those disciplines?
In the introduction, you had mentioned that we take 16. We've actually gone down to 12 this
Oh,
year.
I wrote about 16. We said we kept ourselves safe to say about. That's fine. 12 is
Well,
small. It's a small class.
we're kind of taking a leap of faith here with our 12 because
Yep.
we also see a need for other areas to get involved. So, like the BFA dance majors, the vocal performance majors, the BFA acting, we kind of want to create a community of performers instead of just the MDT people doing the MDT things.
Yep.
So, there's that.
Yep.
The first year, the students will roughly take a beginning acting course. They'll take a voice and diction course. Well, they'll study a lot of Fitzmaurice and Linklater. They will take uh, a group singing voice class where it's kind of a little bit pedagogical so that they learn the mechanics of the voice, and um, they all sing together. That's the class that I'm in charge of, so I feel
Hmm.
very passionate about it. And
Hmm.
it's probably the only class that our entire cohort takes all together. So
Uh-huh.
that's also something that's different. Um, they and I my goal in that class is to create an environment where they can really support each other. It's obviously a very competitive business, but we want them to know how to navigate that competitiveness as well as being a supporter to their,
Mhm.
their fellow colleagues, because you're nothing without a team and you're
Mhm.
nothing without a cast, and it's important they make those connections and learn how to do that now in college, and then they move on.
And the focus of that class is like a vocal pedagogy kind of thing? Like, they're learning about the voice, about
They're
their
Yeah,
own voice, that kind of thing?
they're learning about the voice, the mechanics of the voice, and then they also are singing in front of each other.
Mhm.
Some of the students have never had any kind of contemporary training, and so that's kind of new to them. And
Yep.
then some have never had any classical or legit training at all. So
Mhm.
we kind of get everybody on the same page and work on those concepts all together. So,
Yep.
and it's fun because they start to really especially those that are right out of high school, I feel like they really start to appreciate other people's talents and gifts,
Mhm.
and also see where they fit in the scheme of things, hopefully.
Yep.
So, yeah,
That makes sense.
that's
That voice world, and then what about the dance of it all? Do you have a sense of sort of what those 4 years look like?
yes, dance. They are required to take ballet, jazz, tap, and a contemporary class. And we have levels all throughout their career at BYU.
And so levels meaning if I'm a freshman and I'm really advanced, I might jump right to the top level, or I might stick for a while on the
You would might
level.
start at like a 200 level, like our
Mhm.
ballet department wants all of the students to make sure they have those foundations, because sometimes they can come from like, competitive studios where maybe the focus was more based on the competitions rather than the
Uh-huh.
technique. So we
Right.
kind of,
Foundation of ballet or
again,
whatever.
try to get everybody on that same playing
Yep.
field. Um, and then in the second year, they will take a music theory course that's specifically for MDT students. They will take like a musical scene study course, which is basically kind of acting for musicals level one. Again, they'll probably move up in their dance
Mhm.
training as well. And then that's also the time where they start taking private vocal
Uh-huh.
lessons.
That's sophomore year.
That is their sophomore
Yeah.
year. Junior year, we have a class called Junior Seminar where the students take full musicals, condense them down to about 45 minutes, and perform them in their entirety.
Mhm.
Um, and that again, we're working on building their skills as far as um, direction and choreography. That's not the focus of the class. The focus is still to perform and to create characters and stories within the world of musical theater.
Yep.
However, they are starting to kind of dabble in
Yep.
those other aspects of musical theater. They in acting, they have the opportunity at this level to start taking like an acting for film course. There's a Let's see, what else can they take? They can take like a dialects course. Um, we have classics, so where they can learn Shakespeare. Those are
Mhm.
electives for our particular students, but
Mhm.
that is something we do encourage our students to take, just because I feel like Shakespeare is musicals without singing.
The ballet of acting, right? To
It's
get
kind
some
of
foundational stuff there, so that
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then their senior year, they kind of finish up some of those courses. They take an auditions course where they learn how to audition. We also learn a little bit about the business, creating
Mhm.
their websites, creating reels, how to market themselves, basically, like on Instagram and Facebook. Um, who knows about TikTok anymore? I don't know. Is it staying? Is it
Is it
going?
going? Yeah, by the time it's released, we'll know, I guess. Well, I
I
don't think
don't
it's not
even know.
going anywhere. It just might be sold to a different company, right?
There
I don't
you
think
go.
we're getting rid of our TikTok people. I think we're going to be okay.
I'm like,
Yeah,
how can they really? Well, whatever. That's for another podcast, my friend.
that's right. But let's get into. You mentioned a little bit of sort of the different majors, the BFA actors, maybe their
Yes.
participating class versus the MTs, or the MDTs, I should say. How do they interact in terms of, are they taking a lot of classes together? Is it, if I'm an actor and I'm interested in some MDT classes, am I able to cross over and take a couple of those? How does that work in terms of the different departments?
Yes. So the BFA actors are not necessarily required to take private voice lessons, but many of them do.
Yeah.
Many of them will go outside of either take private lessons or they will take. We have a course through music where non majors can also take private voice. And so they will often go that route.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any of the dance classes are open to our BFA actors. So if they want to, kind of dabble in that, they're welcome to. And then when it comes to the acting courses, most of the acting courses are mixed.
Uh-huh.
With the only class that is not mixed is that junior seminar class I was
Mm-hmm.
telling you about. It's rare that an acting major will even want to take that class just because they have so much that is required of them outside of
Mm-hmm.
MDT. But for the most part, if someone really, let's say someone auditioned a ton of times and just because of their level in dance or whatever, they couldn't get into the MDT program, they can kind of make their own MDT program.
They're MT but no D, maybe, or
There you go.
quite as much D. That would
Hey,
be me. I'd be like, I'm a good singer, but the dance is. I just took a hip hop dance class yesterday, and it was
and
not strong. It was not strong work, Korianne. I'm going to be honest. My work was impassioned. The acting was there, but the dance
yes,
was not its best.
you
It's
know
a
what?
little
That's
rusty.
important. You
Yeah.
were giving it your all.
Well, yeah. Oh, I would give it my all. Let's talk a little bit about the name. So, just this is all these different programs call themselves different things. You get a
Yes.
comedy, but where does the sort of root of music, dance, theater as the sort of name for the BFA or for that program?
When the program was first being created, I think at the time there weren't a lot of true triple threat programs,
Uh huh.
and that is something they wanted a very interdisciplinary uh, BFA that would create true triple threats. So
And is it fair to maybe say the inclusion of the word dance in there at least is to indicate, hey, we do really have strong dance in terms of some other programs say music, theater, dance, or with a dance emphasis, it almost means with that. Is
yeah,
that a fair characterization there when you say triple threat to say our dance is really strong?
yes, our dance component is pretty rigorous, and like with many programs, I'm sure dance classes are, you know, I don't know, every day and an hour a day, and yet they get like 1.5 credits for it, right? Because there's not a lot of outside time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's the struggle actually with our courses right now in our curriculum is that the dance does take up so much time, but like I mentioned before, the our our students that come out of our program really are exceptional, at least exceptional movers, but we do create some exceptional
No,
dancers.
that is certainly true reputationally. That I think a lot of people would say, oh,
Yes.
BYU graduates a lot of really strong dancers. We hired one of them to be a coach for us, so
You did?
we did, of course. She was amazing. So, but really, that's something I think
Wonderful.
is known for in terms of like there's a lot of really strong dancers in the city who come out of BYU.
Yes.
Um, speaking of that coming out, you mentioned the business class. We've been learning a little bit about that. Can you talk about the preparing your students for the launch into the business and into the showcase, sort of how that goes in terms of their introduction to the industry beyond because obviously there's not a lot of there's theater in Utah, but I imagine a lot of your students are going to end up in New York, end up in LA, end up in other cities. How are they going to sort of make that journey?
I think we've been really lucky. My predecessor, Tim Threlfall, he actually just retired this year. He made a wonderful connection with Telsey agency, and we've been able to work pretty closely with Rachel Hoffman
Hmm.
in our New York Showcase class.
Hmm.
So that is the last semester of our seniors career at BYU. They take a New York Showcase class. We go through their material. We come up with a short list of their material. We end up showcasing that short list to Rachel and having her kind of help us and the students navigate what would uh, best showcase them,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word. And in the past, we've also invited out like Michael Casara and
Mm-hmm.
some other agents that have been able to kind of give us a little bit of that connection and their feedback with how they interact with the music, dance, theater world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been more than helpful. In the past couple of years, myself and my colleague Stephanie Bryan Holt, as we take them out there to do the showcase, we perform at Open Jar, which is awesome, and also owned by a former BYU
I
alum.
know.
Yes, and we have been starting to incorporate workshops
Mm-hmm.
into their time there. So it's not just about the showcase; it's also about doing workshops, getting feedback from other trained professionals.
Uh-huh.
And I think that particular component of our New York Showcase experience is going to expand. We're going to try in the next year, so 2025, adding some more dance workshops, even some more specialized acting workshops, singing, etc. Because we feel like it's important for them to be seen by agents and managers, but we also feel like it's important for them to be seen and worked with in workshops.
Yep.
That's an important.
Really smart, especially as into the 2020s, as
Oh,
more and more showcases happened,
yeah.
that happened the past 15, 20 years, that how do you distinguish yourself? How do you get seen in a way
Mhm.
that's not just a butt in a seat for 2 minutes checking off a box, but going, can I get a
Yeah.
real experience? That's a tricky balance, I'm sure, for all schools to figure out with budgets and time and all those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's tricky for the students to feel like that 3 minutes
Oof,
is
yeah.
really going to
I remember it. I mean,
say
yeah,
who
it's like,
they are.
come on. I know. It's yeah. I mean, it's how they feel in their college audition process now when they walk in a room and they go, they talked to me for 2 minutes. I did my stuff. I was at, and how do they know? How do I know? How do
Yes.
all that stuff that
Yeah.
happens so fast. Let's talk a little bit about outside of the theater program. So, what does sort of a student experience at BYU look like? Both, I'd love to hear kind of academics outside of the theater program, if they're taking
Mhm.
minors and double majors, but then also just like campus life stuff, and maybe the people who do enjoy the snowy, sunny days or whatever. What is the experience of a BYU student outside of the theater world?
Yeah. Well, as much as we would love our program to have a conservatory feel, which we do try to hold on to that,
Yeah.
our students are required to take general eds, and then they are also required to take some religion courses as well.
Hmm.
So they're pretty busy. It's
Hmm.
rare that a student will have a minor, but I've noticed that more of our transfer students come in with like a lot of credits from a different area, and they'll try to apply that to a minor and um, yeah, be successful that way. We have a really strong law program, law school. Um, our school is mostly focused on undergrad education. Um, so, uh, yeah, it's kind of rare that you would get your graduate degree from the same institution. But I had a family and couldn't
I
really
was like, say, but yet you did, right? Is that true?
up
Did I read
until.
that correctly in the bio?
But
Yeah.
yes, yes. So I was able to get my master's degree there. But yeah, the goal for BYU is to get a really great undergrad education, and then they want them to go out and go
For
to
the
another
most part, a
school.
terminal
Yeah,
degree or whatever, in terms of when in this industry that I imagine many people then go out and try to work,
yeah,
at the BFA
exactly.
Music Dance Theater. Well, talk to me a little bit about the campus life part of it, though. So, what is the experience of, and we'll talk about how many of your students come from Utah already, or at least the Western region around. But
Mhm.
for someone who doesn't know, what is that sort of, what does it look like in terms of the mountains and the whatever,
Well, we're crazy about football, and
Crazy about football? Okay,
we are
great.
crazy about football. We're crazy about our mascot.
Uh huh.
Um, well, the basketball team has been in the news quite a bit lately because we got a new head coach.
Oh.
So there's that. I don't know much
And how
about
many
it.
music, dance, theater majors are on the basketball team? I'm just curious.
We actually
Get
had,
out of town,
I
Corey.
don't know
I'm
if I'm
joking.
outing them, but we had a couple of uh, MDT students who were a friend of our mascot.
Oh, a friend.
We call it a friend.
I see. I understand. Fascinating. Fascinating. But not the center for the basketball team or something like that. Nothing that,
No,
no
no,
struggle
we
boys
call it, it's, no, I think those students barely have time to
Yeah. No, I
play
know that's
basketball,
yeah, exactly.
let alone sing and dance,
Yeah.
We did have a former football player. He actually got hurt, unfortunately,
Mhm.
and ended up being a BFA actor.
Wow.
So
There you go. It's the High School Musical story all over again, or whatever it is.
when you
Um,
can't play basketball or football, come be an actor.
I guess I'll go here. Tell me a little bit about just in terms of, I mentioned, sort of guessing that many people, because I know some people who have gone to BYU who end up in New York. Do most of your students end up in New York? Do most go to LA? How many stay in the Utah region in terms of after they graduate?
That's a great question. This year's class, I believe 90% of them are planning on moving to New York.
And then what about in terms of coming in? How many come from the Utah region? How many come from the Northwest, and how many come from different places in the country?
Um, I think it depends on every class. We have few students from Canada. We've had a few students come from Australia.
Hmm.
But pretty much all over the US. That is something that we also try to do during our audition process, is make sure that there is a nice variety of people coming
Geographic
from
diversity.
different, yeah. Hmm.
Totally makes sense. All right, let's talk a little bit about cost. And I'm going to see if I can pull up. We have some pull up numbers here. It seems like tuition is quite low,
Yes.
if I'm seeing this correctly. This was for half a tuition. So now tell me if I'm reading this right. That if I'm LDS, it's about $3,000, and if I'm not, it's 65. Is that right?
I'm not actually sure about the non-LDS prices, but I do know that for an LDS student, it's about 6,500 a year.
For the year, right? So that was per semester was what I was reading there. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and then there's spring, summer semester, and then with this all, again, I'll look up all these specifics on the website, but quite cheap in terms of tuition, right? How does that work in terms of, are there potentially additional scholarships on top of that? If I were someone who, is it a merit scholarship? Is it an academic scholarship? And is it artistic? How does that work in terms of if I were to get additional scholarships beyond that low price?
Every year, our MDT students have the opportunity to apply for a talent scholarship, and they
Mhm.
apply at the end of September. And then that scholarship will, like whatever they're awarded, will take them through the entire next
For the
school
next year.
year.
So
Mhm.
each year you'd be auditioning potentially to get talent scholarship. And are there academic scholarships? Do they ever come in with some academic money?
Yes. Yeah. There are, and we have a really great like scholarship uh, resources for the students to go out and get help. We have a group that sometimes the students will be a part of. It's called the Young Ambassadors, and they potentially will go out and tour. So this year they're going to China,
Hmm.
and next year they'll be going to Dubai. And it's kind of a musical theater review type of show. So a lot of our MDT students will do that group for a couple of years, and there are scholarships available if they do those kind of groups. We also have in TMA, we have a really great program. We have what's called an emergency scholarship fund. So for students who, whatever reason, need financial support in an emergency, they can
Hmm.
apply at any time of the year. And then that application goes through a committee, and then that committee will award the student the funds that are needed. They'll usually to counsel with the student and talk to the student about other opportunities the student is taking to get funds to take care of school and rent and those kind of things.
Hmm.
So we do try to, not just give out money, but also try to help them as far as their budget is concerned, other resources that they can go to get funds for school.
I love it. Well, it's my last question for this section, which is just we're in that time of year right now as we record, though this will be released after May 1st, but we're in that time of year where people are making the decisions to sign on the dotted line. Where am I going to actually go to school? As you're having those conversations with families, whether it's a parent or a student, why do you find that a student says, you know what, BYU is definitely the right school for me. I want to go here. And why do you find sometimes students go, it was between you and another school, but I'm going to go with the other school? Why do you find, if you know those answers, someone chooses one or the other?
Um, Honestly, just feedback from people that have auditioned for us. It's a feeling they get when they come to our audition,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not, and a feeling whether they go to another place or not. They'll just get that impression that that's where they belong, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that happens to a lot of students. Our audition process is kind of unique, where we do workshop a little bit with the students, so they get to work with one or two members of the MDT committee. And sometimes it's those interactions that have caused students to say, I really wasn't thinking BYU. My parents wanted me to audition here.
Uh-huh.
And they end up working with one of my colleagues and really wanting to come and further their education with that particular professor.
I love it. Well, now we're getting into the second half, so let's take our break. We'll be back in a flash to talk about the audition and the admission process. So we'll be back with Korianne. All right, we are back with Korianne from BYU, and we're going to chat a little bit about the audition process. I love you mentioned the sort of workshop aspect of it, but I'd love to sort of start off with when you're behind the table, what are you looking for from a student that makes you say, this feels like a student who I want to bring on? Like, what are you kind of sniffing for in your audition process that makes you say, I want to see more from this person?
That is a really great question. This year, we did a different approach to our auditions. Um, so, just kind of an overview of how we do our auditions.
Please.
The students will do a pre screen where they upload two monologues, two songs, and they will do a dance that our dance professor has choreographed for them to learn and then film themselves doing.
Yep.
And they upload that along with their high school transcript or their transcript from their previous college. They also have an intent letter that they will write about their intentions on attending BYU and why musical theater. But this year we added, after they made the callback, we added an interview component. So we gave them questions. One of the questions was, why do you want to study musical theater through the lens of the gospel? What is something hard that you've had to overcome, and how did you do it? So we're kind of also looking at character. And I can tell you some of those interviews really made a big difference to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was maybe kind of on the fence with a student, but then when I viewed their interview, I was like, I want that person. That person's going to
Mm-hmm.
work hard. That person's going to be grateful for the things that they are receiving. They are going to help their cohort. Like, just creating that environment where
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we would want all theater environments to exude. So
Totally.
yeah.
And that's the live interview experience. That's really
That's
really what
actually
that's on the
a
video.
videotaped. Yeah. So we gave them the questions ahead of time, and then they filmed themselves. They only had I think it was like 30 seconds to a minute to read the
Uh-huh.
questions, and then so it felt live. It wasn't something that they
Right.
could,
Not hopefully a pre-canned, written out, my whole
yeah.
answer, here's an essay. Well, but then so tell me about the live experience in terms of the workshop. So you mentioned, there'll often be a couple people behind the table. What does that look like? Are you getting adjustments? Are you getting interview questions? What is that sort of live workshop in the audition part of it?
So we start with the dance component, and they'll they'll redo the dance that they learned online. So kind of get everybody to relax a little
Uh,
bit. They feel confident that, oh, I already did this dance, so I could do
mhm.
this. And then they usually will learn a new combination. And sometimes it's taught by like a guest choreographer. A couple years ago, we had Erin Wilson, who was a part of the cast of Wicked. She's
Mm-hmm.
also a BYU alum. She came and did a, part of that dance audition. After that, we give them a little break so that they can, get ready for the acting and the singing. And then the workshop component, we invite, we've done it different every year. We've done it where the entire group of auditionees are in the same room all together watching each other.
Mm-hmm.
But this year we decided to just do one on one, and we liked that a lot
Yeah.
better. We thought we could really get to know the person a little bit more, talk to them a little bit more. They felt a little more comfortable, not like
Mm-hmm.
they were being watched by all of their peers. And then, depending on their singing or their acting, myself and my other colleague who does the acting component, he or I would get up and basically just kind of work with them and see how they took direction, or see if they made changes. They made changes vocally, if they could make
Mm-hmm.
changes in their acting, their physical stature while they were giving their pieces. Some of these young auditionees are very prepared and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes choreographed prepared. And we
Mm-hmm.
want to see how well they kind of let go of that and just show their true selves.
Mm-hmm. I love it. You mentioned the pre-screen process into the live audition, sort of the cut. Do you know what percentage that is? I know you don't have to have exact numbers, but about how many people are, if I'm sending a pre-screen, what percentage are getting that
I actually
callback?
think I have an actual percentage for
Yeah.
you.
Love it. We love a percentage.
It's like 25% of the people who hand in an audition
Are going to get a
will
callback.
get a callback.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yep. And what does that callback audition look like in terms of, the ways in which I can do that? Is the only option to come live to campus? I know you guys, I think, do not participate in Unifieds, right? But are there other regional chances to come and meet you, or is it mostly I do have to come to campus and do the audition?
It's mostly that they need to come to campus. If we have a special, so in our faith, many people will take 2 years off and serve
Mm-hmm.
a mission. And so sometimes those people have either handed in videos after the fact, or depending on when they return, sometimes we just encourage them to re-audition again,
Uh-huh.
because we are a very hard start fall program. So if you can't be here in the fall semester, you can't start, because those are when all of the foundational classes are being taught, is that first year.
But you're saying for some of those students, potentially there's virtual components or ways that you could, if you can't attend the live one because you're far away or whatever, but you can
Yeah,
come for the fall.
we
There's
would
some accommodation
definitely
there.
yeah, we would definitely take each case, on a case by case basis. But yeah, for the most part, we like to see them live. I think them being in the room is super helpful. But if we needed to, we could do a virtual
Yep.
callback. Mhm.
And then what about, what about my application that is not the artistic side of that? What is affected by the university in terms of, do you have to have a minimum GPA? How do you look at grades, or how do they look at SATs, essays? What sort of factors of the application, the academic application, are factored into admission?
So currently, right now, they are not you don't have to hand in an SAT or an ACT
Hmm.
score. I think they're going to revisit that in a couple of years. So we'll see where that goes.
Yep.
But there are a variety of essays that the student has to complete for the actual application to BYU. Um, they, yeah, their GPA. There's not a minimum GPA that they have to have, because they do take the whole student into account.
Yep.
But I would say, generally speaking, our students have uh, really high GPAs. If there is a student that applies for BYU and we can see that their grade point average or something like that is really kind of in the danger zone, like we really don't even think they would get a second look,
Hmm.
because the academic office might feel like they would struggle in school, which
Hmm.
is a very fair assessment. But we feel like they really need to be in our program, and we are willing to give them academic support for their entirety of BYU. There are ways in which we can advocate for that student. The academic office still has the final say. We can't just sweep in and say, we want this student to be accepted. So
But you
do
can
it.
push for someone and say, "Hey, I think they're great. Can you give them
Yeah.
a chance? You look at them." Yeah.
But we do have to provide them with academic support their entire time at BYU. So even if they choose not to do MDT after their first year, we are still responsible for their academic success moving forward. So it's a tricky gamble sometimes for us to take that, into account. Sometimes with those students, we suggest to them, like we'll tell them, you are very talented. We really want you here. How about you attend this school or this college for a couple of years and then transfer back over when your GPA is a little
Yeah,
bit
you
better.
mentioned that a couple of times in terms of different gap year students, and I'm also wondering about with the 2 years, what does the age of a BYU quote unquote freshman look like? Does it tend to be a little older? Are more of your students not 18?
It is wild. I can't even say that there's a set number because let's see, this past first year class, we had 2 true freshmen, so 18-year-olds.
2. Wow.
2. And then we had a bunch of people who had already been at BYU for a year. And then we had a handful of transfer students.
But someone who's been at BYU for a year, when they're starting with MDT, they're starting as a quote unquote freshman. They would still do 4 years of MDT. So what you're saying in the freshman
You can
class?
finish if you're a transfer student or you are let's say you've already been at BYU, but you get in your second year of school, you can finish our program in 3 years.
Great.
But no less than that.
And how high does that
pretty
age range?
rigorous.
I mean, do you have quote unquote freshmen who are in their 30s? Like, how high up does it register? Is it just to the low 20s, or
No,
what does that look
I
like?
would say, well, we have a 3-time limit for people to audition for our program. So if they don't make it their third year, we really try to steer them in another direction because we want them to find a major where they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And also, we don't want them to be forever college students, as much as we all would love to be forever college students.
I would love. Can I only go back? Yeah. That's
I love school. I'm a
no.
great student,
Who
but
doesn't? Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I
some people.
can't
We do.
live as a student.
Yeah. That's true too. I like that. You and Juilliard, you guys have the 3-time limit that you're allowed to do. I always feel
Yes,
so like it's like we've said no. No, we've really said no. It's 3
yes.
times we have to reject you.
It's sometimes really devastating for some of these kids, but we have another program within our theater umbrella. It's called Theater Art Studies, and you don't have to apply to get into the program, but you could go in and learn about directing and lighting and costuming and you could even perform if your scores are high enough. And I think that's just as viable of a way to study what you love, but not feel like you have to do the thing.
Before I fully move on from the academic side of it, just you mentioned, you really look at those some video answers, which are kind of video essays, but quick ones
Yeah.
on the video application. Do you look at any of the essays on the application side? Do you read letters of recommendation? Is there any part of the academic application that you sort of engage with?
We actually don't see the academic application. We only see their application to us. I am curious, though, if their letter of intent is similar to maybe one of their essays they have to do for BYU. That's a great question. Maybe something we can look into the future. But I, yeah, some of these students in their letter of intent of doing musical theater, I mean, there are pages and pages and pages, and I have seen some that are just a couple sentences. It's really interesting the variety of answers we get for that particular one.
I love to talk about, you mentioned you look for geographic diversity as something as you're filling out your class to go, hey, look, let's not have everyone be from Utah, or let's have some different
Yeah.
experiences. What else are you thinking about in terms of and how that's calculated in your 12 now? My gosh, 12. Are
I
you thinking
know.
about stuff like gender balance? Are you thinking about size and racial diversity? Is that all stuff that's kind of going into the factors? And then how does that work with stuff like the initial offers and waitlist movement as you're trying to 12 is a pretty intimate number to get that right. How are you sort of doing that balancing as it happens?
It's tricky, especially with musical theater. Of course, we're going to get more women auditioning for us than men. And there have been a few years where we have been able to have equal numbers of both male and female. Um, As far as ethnicity goes, we actually try to recruit different ethnicities, and then we also try to encourage those that have maybe come to some of our summer camps for high schools. We use that as a recruiting tool to kind of help students know more about our programs and come to our programs. Um, I would say so. This is the first year we've done 12, so it was a little bit tricky because we had our 12 people, and then we had one of our male students drop because he felt like he needed to do a different major, which is totally fine. Love him. And then so we extended it actually to a female student, and she wanted to go on a mission. So we're postponing her admittance for a year and a half. And then we ended up getting someone else. So, I mean, I feel like our callback list is big enough that really anyone that came to callbacks is kind of on the wait list if they don't make the program, because that's 50% of those students get into the program at that point.
Oh, I should have asked that question. So 50%, once you have a callback, 50% now are actually going to be admitted.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that number can go as low as 10, and that number can go as high as 12. We're going to figure out if that's a good number for us for right now for the next couple of years, and see if we need to increase or decrease. I don't think we'll decrease. 12 is tiny.
You did. And I want to re-ask a question. I didn't want to, overly focus on the Mormon of it all at the top, though I know that's going to be a big
I
question.
mean, it is an elephant.
It's an elephant that's going to be in the room for a lot of our listeners.
You can talk about it as much as you want. It is what it is.
Just to speak to the experience, you said you had one currently in the school, or one currently in this freshman class who's not Mormon?
One in MDT.
MDT of the 50 currently there. And what, I know, of course, we saw on the website sort of inclusive. We want all to be, all are allowed. What do you think that experience is for, let's say I were a Christian non-Mormon student? Would that be a difficult experience for me? Like, I guess, how's that student doing? Don't focus on that poor student. But in terms of, if I were someone who goes, because I'll say a lot of people would see the price tag and would see, maybe it go, I'm really for a religious, I'm looking at other Catholic and, Christian universities. What would that experience be if I'm not a Mormon, I'm not particularly interested in converting? What would my experience at the school be?
I think it depends on, well, and this also goes for people that are LDS as well. I think if you're going into a very religious school, you have to be okay with like our honor code, for example, and you have to be okay with praying in class, and you have to be, those things. If you are not comfortable with those things, even if you are LDS, like we talked about before, that faith journey spectrum, it might not be the school for you, because it is something that is very much a part of the culture there. And so, going back to your question about that particular student and how she's doing, she is a rock star, and I feel like she has handled it in such a beautiful way. She is very spiritual herself, and she and I have had very intimate conversations about her belief system and how that works, and she doesn't feel uncomfortable praying in class. And so for her, I think it's been the right choice, because even though she is not of our faith, she has felt very at home being surrounded by people that were Christian. So yeah, like I said, it's, and I hope that doesn't come off too harsh. Like, if you don't want to talk about Jesus, don't come to the school. No, I hope that doesn't come off that way.
That's what students need to hear if that's going to be the truth of their experience. I'm so glad that you brought up the spectrum again too, because I'll say, it just reveals some of my own bias, especially growing up in suburban Pittsburgh, where like, I think I would have thought of Mormonism as more of a binary, you are or you aren't. Though, of course, like all other religions, as I encounter Mormon people, I've met now multiple Mormon friends living in New York, how often it actually is like, they're like, I am LDS, but I may not be completely observant, and I may not be like that. People are also along the spectrum, like anything else, where you go, you may not be an incredibly observant, or you may not believe in that. And so maybe that we're probably speaking more toward those people who are on the spectrum, if you're questioning whether that's right for you
Yeah.
or not. You mentioned also, I just wanted to make sure we speak to, you have some LGBT students too, in terms of what is their experience in terms of feeling, if their fear would be, hey, I am LDS, but I'm not sure what my experience is. Is it going to feel like a typical theater program, which tends to be more inclusive? Am I going to be judged by the outside, campus in terms of just what is the experience of your LGBT students?
That's a good question. I know that some students in general have felt unsafe, but oddly it doesn't make them want to leave because I think they know that safety resides in our program.
And you
And
say
so
unsafe, meaning felt unsafe from, what did you feel like, from within the program, from external
I
elements
don't
on the
think
campus?
so. I think just kind of like, when sometimes there's been protests or there's been movements or whatnot, I think some students have maybe felt like, oh no, something's going to happen and I'm going to be kicked out of the program. And honestly, if all of our students, it doesn't matter their orientation, but if all of our students are willing to follow the honor code, um, then we're all on the same playing field. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your orientation or your belief system at that moment. What matters is that you've made a commitment to honor the honor code at BYU, and um, you're going to stick to that. And then that regardless of any of those things, those beliefs, those feelings, um, that you have professors that love you unconditionally
Mhm.
and want you to be here. And I think that's one thing that I would hope that all of our students, no matter what, faith
Mhm.
spectrum, life spectrum,
Yeah.
personalities, I mean, we're all on some kind of spectrum. I want them to know that they're loved
Mm.
regardless.
Well, that's a great place to end that section of the interview. We'll come back. We're going to ask a couple bonus questions, some vocal questions, and we'll wrap up here in a second. So we're right back with Korianne. All right, we are back with Korianne Orton-Johnson, and we're going to talk a little bit about the vocal world because that you have an MM in vocal performance, and it seems like a focus in the opera world. I'd just love to kind of hear about sort of your perspective in terms of, what sometimes called legit singing, or, that sort of the opera world, and how that translates to kind of the modern musical theater world, and how that influences your teaching and the program at BYU.
Sure. So my undergrad was MDT as well. I got trained by some incredible teachers, and even though classical was something I did, I definitely was known throughout my career at school as the belter,
Hmm.
and so that was just what I did.
And I heard you're going to do a little 16 bars for us right now. Is that true? Just to show it
Okay,
off.
that was not part of the questions.
Yeah, that wasn't on the email. That was not.
That was not on the
You
email.
got to stay on your toes, just
Had
like the kids. Come on.
I know. Actually, my first year class at the end of school this year, they asked me to sing for them, so I did.
Heck yes, got to.
I know. I just love them, and I always sing "I Dreamed a Dream." I need to get some other things in my canon, but that's what I did.
Classic. It's a classic. But okay, so you're a belter, but
Anyway,
you
yeah,
wanted to train a little bit more in the opera world. Yeah.
yes. So I had no intention of becoming a full professor. I loved being adjunct. I loved doing my mom thing. I loved performing on the side. But I just got this really strong impression that I should go back to school and get a master's degree. Like I mentioned before, I there was really no opportunity for me to leave Utah to get a master's degree. So
Hmm.
it really did seem like the best choice was at BYU. They have an incredible master's vocal performance program. And so I thought, why not? Um, it was a little tricky of a transition. I won't lie. I think my professors were because my professor. This is also kind of weird. My professors were my colleagues because I had
Hmm.
been working with them as a voice teacher, and so that was also kind of an interesting turn of events. But
Hmm.
we made it work, and I just fell in love with the opera world. I fell in love with it as an art form. Of course, my naive self at the beginning was very frustrated by the lack of acting classes in the opera department. And, but I started to realize that's not what this is about. I mean, yes, there is some beautiful acting that happens in an opera, but it's just a different art form. It's like your hip hop and your ballet, right? They're
I
different.
know about hip hop from that class yesterday. You know.
You're a professional hip hopper,
um,
as we all know.
But as a teacher, like, so, because especially thinking to the 16, 17-year-old listeners, some of whom have voice teachers who maybe are really focused in the classical world.
Mm-hmm.
Some, everyone's got sort of different feelings about, oh, I
Sure.
really don't want to teach you to belt until you're 52 or whatever. And some saying, well, that's not how the world works. And, how do
Yeah.
you sort of, use that sort of combination of classical knowledge and then musical theater knowledge? How does that impact your teaching with students?
So I'm glad you asked that, because I feel very passionate about cross training when it comes to the voice. So in that first year group voice class that I talked about, the students all do an aria,
Mm-hmm.
and they sing in Italian, and then we also learn to belt that same semester. And I think it's one of the reasons I do that is um, I do feel very strongly that their mixed belt will improve with some classical training. And I
Mm-hmm.
also let them know I'm not trying to make you opera stars. I'm not even trying to make you sing classically. But what
Uh-huh.
I am trying to do is work a different muscle that
Mm-hmm.
helps you lighten your belt. Many of my younger belters come pretty heavy,
Uh-huh.
pretty chest dominant. And so I think just using that different muscle helps them to realize it doesn't have to be so weighty and so heavy.
Very well said. That's almost exactly the answer I was shooting for. Not that I was prescribing it, but I'm like, that's what I wanted to hear. Because it's very interesting. I mean, and I think, there are some strong opinions on kind of both ends of going, is this helpful to you? Is this not helpful to you? Is there too much focus on this? Is there not enough focus on style? I think a lot of voice teachers feel, there's a lot of strong opinions in the voice world. What do you feel like when you come in with young students, especially as you see them auditioning and you're thinking, is this, maybe they've got the call back, but is this a primary yes, or are you not going to be in our first pile of yeses? When you're looking at a vocal perspective, are there big red flags, or are there common mistakes that you feel like when you hear this in a voice, you go, oh, that's going to be really hard to untrain? Or is there anything that just from a 17, 18-year-old perspective that you'd want them to know kind of going in?
Um, One thing that is really, really hard to untrain, I would have to say, would be a nasal sound. That is very tricky because they get so accustomed to that soft palate being down, and for all of that sound to be so focused, where, yes, they probably have been told to sing more forward, but it's kind of the wrong
Sing
forward.
in your mask. We've heard that. Shouldn't I be singing in my mask? Yeah.
Yeah, so that I've noticed is a hard one to untrain. Also,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes vowels. Sometimes they just have different ideas about what vowels should be used. My philosophy is just sing the actual vowel, the actual word, and if there's problems, we can make adjustments. But I'm not of the camp where everything should be
Sound British.
modulated, modulated or sound British.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great. And what about from a vocal health perspective? If you hear a student where maybe they're aware they're on somewhere on their vocal health journey and they're going, hey, I'm recovering from something. And, obviously if someone's specifically can't sing, then that's going to be difficult to audition. But if they're in that place, how does that work for you if I'm looking potentially to get admitted, but I'm post-surgery, or I'm
Yeah.
working back from an injury, or how does that work, if I'm looking at BYU?
That's an interesting question. I don't think we've ever been presented with like a first year student that has known that much about their voice in
Uh-huh.
that regard. In every year, we have the National Center for Voice come down and do voice scopes
Mm-hmm.
for the students. And we have found some really interesting things. I mean, sometimes it's really minor, but it's so important for you to get a true, accurate picture of what your vocal health is. And we've had students where even their speaking voice was compromised,
Mm-hmm.
and they've had these scopes done. They've been able to continue their work with the center up in Salt Lake and get themselves in a place where there's this glorious voice. So in answer to your question, I I've never come across a voice that I was like, "Oh, that's just that cannot be remedied. I really feel like, I mean, it's something we all have,
Hmm.
and I don't know if, I mean, I have come across some students that don't sing in tune, but for the most part, I do feel like we are all meant to express ourselves through our voice, whether it be singing or speaking, and we all have the ability to do it healthfully. And I think sometimes it just takes a minute, or takes, getting those voice scopes done to get those students really recognizing the importance of speaking and singing healthily, where sometimes where they're coming from is, well, you're a belter, sing louder and bigger, and oh my gosh, you're amazing, where that actually could do some vocal damage.
I have to introduce you to some of my family members if you think everyone is meant to express themselves through song. I'm
Ooh,
just saying that not everyone. Some of the Murphys are not necessarily
like,
made to do
we're
it.
going to test out that theory.
Yeah. I just want to wrap up with, sort of in your time at BYU, I imagine you've seen some transitions and some changes, and I'd love to hear about like the past couple of years post COVID, how that has affected the university, and what changes have come, and what are the next 5 years look like, as you sort of feel the university shifting and trying to modernize, and what all these theater programs trying to do to kind of bring themselves into the 21st century or the 2020s or whatever we're saying. What does that look like from BYU? How are you sort of adjusting, or how's the program continuing to change?
Um, Singing was really tricky fall of 2020 and also into 2021. Um, we had to half size our classes. We were, most, especially the fall of 2020, we were, for music, for singing especially, we were mostly, I'd say 95% online,
Hmm.
just because the dangers were just so unknown. And as we started to open back up again, the university really did a wonderful job of getting cameras and equipment into every single classroom, so that every classroom has the capabilities of uh, going online completely,
Hmm.
including our dance rooms. My voice room has that. The university supplied really beautiful, nice microphones for all of the teachers. It also supplied Zoom accounts for everybody, so that no one was having to pay for those extra. The free
Hmm.
was 40 minutes, and
Hmm.
they expanded that to be the better account. I don't even know what to call it, but um, so I think they really did a good job. I mean, at first, the equipment and whatnot, they were more temporary equipment, but now everything is permanent in
Hmm.
all of the classrooms, which is,
And is it something that's moving forward, that there are some classes that are stayed virtual, or the virtual elements that you've now incorporated in, that are actually actively used in terms of hybrid classes or something like that?
I think the biggest thing that it helped us realize is there were other ways for us to teach. We could use Go React, we could use video submissions, we could, like, now self-taping is just the thing to do.
Mhm.
And so all of our local semi-professional theaters are all doing self-tape, so our students are getting that experience of self-taping all the time. We have a self-tape studio in our voice studios. And yeah, I think, just it also, I think, overall just taught us that we can adjust,
Mhm.
we can make changes, and we can, I think it's also, hopefully, well, at least I can only speak for myself, but it has made me more compassionate when a student says, they're sick or they're ill.
Mhm.
And now we have options. They can come to class and wear a mask, or we can have them just zoom in so they don't miss
Mhm.
any material. So just the ability for us to pivot on a dime and to be creative in how we're teaching, I think is exceptional.
Well said. All right, my last question for you is just to the parents out there. We have a lot of parent listeners. Any advice for parents as they're helping their child through this process? Whether that's a likely now as a listener more of a junior or sophomore, as you're looking at schools, maybe
Mhm.
you're a freshman if you're a go-getter, and you're looking at the school list. But maybe even depending when people are listening to this, of a senior who's going through the actual process itself. Any advice in terms of how they can best support their kid as they're going through this?
I would say make sure that your child or your student has a team. Now, I know that not everybody can afford the best coaches, but there are coaches out there that are exceptional at what they do and can really help your child prepare for these auditions. I would also, when it comes to the specifically for us and the dance component, um, since many of our applicants are members of the church, I would say get into a church hall and do your dance.
Hmm.
Do your dance audition in there. We've had living room dance auditions. We've had driveway in the snow dance
Mm-mm,
auditions. I mean,
mm-mm.
those are diehards, man.
Dangerous.
I a little dangerous, but literally they had shoveled the snow on their driveway and
Hmm.
they did their and I'm like, just get into a church because the 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 church is such a nice facility and it's
Hmm.
big and they can have the space to move and
Not a lot
you
of
know,
ice on the ground, I imagine, in the church.
yes, yes. I also don't think they need to get super fancy with like microphones or recording things. Like, really, on the other side of that camera, we want to hear your student be the best that they can be. And the highest, loudest note is not always the best.
Yep.
So,
We agree 100% on the no spending money on equipment. What are you trying to give them discount coaching teams? They should use the best coaching team only. Okay, Korianne, it's not about the discount cheapos out there. No, just
no, I'm not saying discount cheapos. I am
no,
saying
of
you
course,
can
there's
get a
lots of wonderful
great team
for sure.
that's, not going to break the bank.
Your price point. Could not agree more. Even
I'm
so,
trying to be
you
frugal
should
here.
use the best of always if you
How
have the
much
option.
is expensive?
You're not wrong. Well, not your college. Most colleges are expensive.
No,
Not
not
your college.
not our college. Come to
Um,
our college. We love you.
There you go. If people want to find out more information, what's the best place to check you out? Do we like websites, social medias? What's the best way to find out
Yes, they
more?
can check out our TMA. I think it's tma.byu.edu.
They'll be Googling. They won't be typing that in. Don't worry. That's fine.
No, they probably won't. Yes, but just Google Music Dance Theater, BYU.
Yeah.
They can even contact me directly if they would like to. Yeah,
Awesome.
I love to answer questions and help people live their dream.
Well, thank you so much for the time, Corianne. This was so fun to get to chat with
You're welcome. It was fun to chat with you.
you. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Corianne. I am not going to give you a long takeaway today. I know I say that all the time, but this time I actually mean it. I really do not have a takeaway of substance. I guess I'm tempted to give longer thoughts on like religion and the arts. I mentioned we do that in an upcoming episode with Corey Cott. And I actually think my perspective would be potentially helpful to our less religious listeners. I think I might have something to share with kind of fellow agnostics who maybe have some more judgment or have some more feelings about it, and kind of how my feelings about spirituality and religion have shifted with age toward the more open and understanding. But I have to imagine, here we are over an hour into the episode, that the percentage of listeners who have made it this far and are not themselves religious is pretty small. I imagine if you're one of those people, you're probably like my mother. So you can just, text me. Not that she will. My mother never texts me. And certainly, I am not going to try to advise religious people on their own faith journeys or anything in that. What a value could I offer there? So I guess I will just add for anyone who is Mormon, but who's maybe considering going to secular schools as well, which of course that can work too. I mentioned having a Mormon schoolmate at Carnegie Mellon. That what I said in this interview really is true in terms of BYU being a respected school in this industry. So if anyone would feel like they might be kind of shortchanging themselves or missing out, if you feel like this is the right kind of school for you, but you're worried that like, what will people think of me? I'll just say that it certainly is a well-respected school, and we might hire you at MTCA, but certainly into the world of the Broadway world. It's a very well thought of school. So you probably don't need me to tell you that if you've listened this far into the episode and if you know as much as you do about BYU already, but there you go. In fairness, you probably don't need me to tell you much of anything. Short of that, this episode was expertly produced by Meghan Cordier and Kelly Prendergast, and that we love your ratings and reviews wherever you can leave ratings and reviews. Follow us at Mapping the College Audition and check us out at mtca.com for more information on our individual coaching services. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, do you feel robbed without me doing a full takeaway? Should I do an extra takeaway in a future episode, or do you just not care? We'll see you next week.